If the United States split geographically into two separate nations, a Western Bloc and an Eastern Bloc, and they went to war, who would actually win? And yes, in this scenario, we are ignoring all the politics and culture wars. We are just talking about a total mobilization of resources, industry, and manpower. On one side, you have the industrial and population heavyweights of the East Coast. On the other, the massive resources, open space, and strategic depth of the West. This is a war of logistics, energy, geography, and endurance. And when you actually run the numbers, looking at food, fuel, military bases, and raw geography, the answer is not as obvious as you might think. First, we have to draw the line. Well, let's keep it simple. The Mississippi River. And this isn't an arbitrary choice. The Mississippi is one of the largest river systems on Earth. For a modern military, it is a formidable barrier. It is wide, the currents are strong, and the bridges that cross it are massive choke points that are easily destroyed or defended. Historically, this river has always been the dividing line between the established East and the frontier. So the rules are simple. Everything west of the river is the West. Everything east is the East. No states are split in half. Let's look at the roster, starting with the Western Alliance. This bloc consists of 24 states. Anchoring the Pacific coast, we have the economic titans, California, Oregon, and Washington. This gives the West total control of the Pacific Ocean and the tech hubs of Silicon Valley. Moving inland, we have the fortress states of the mountains, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. These states provide immense strategic depth and are incredibly difficult to invade. Then we have the agricultural backbone and the energy powerhouse. The Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and the heavy hitter, Texas. Securing the river border itself, we have Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Crucially, assigning Louisiana to the west gives this bloc control over the mouth of the Mississippi River, blocking the East's river trade. And finally, Alaska and Hawaii go west. In a real conflict, they are supplied and defended through the Pacific. There is simply no realistic way for the East Coast to hold them. Facing them is the Eastern Alliance. This bloc holds 26 states and the bulk of American history. It starts with New England states and the massive Boswash Corridor. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. This is the financial and political heart of the continent. Moving south, we have the military powerhouses: West Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. Then the heartland river states like Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. And finally, the Rust Belt Industrial Core: Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So the board is set: 24 states west, 26 states east. Let's see how they match up. First up, manpower and industry. Right out of the gate, the East has a clear dominant advantage: people. Slightly over half of the US population lives east of the Mississippi. The population density on the East Coast is massive. This gives the East a significantly larger pool of potential recruits, factory workers, and engineers. If this war is decided purely by who can put more boots on the ground in the first 6 months, the East wins. However, population is a double-edged sword. More people means more mouths to feed and higher energy demand. Militarily, it means you have massive, dense urban centers that are nightmares to defend. The West has fewer people, but they are concentrated in strategic hubs, leaving the rest of the territory as empty space. In modern warfare, empty space is a luxury. It allows you to disperse forces and hide assets. Economically, it's basically a draw. The East has Wall Street and factories. The West has big tech and aerospace. But the real tiebreaker is what fuels those machines. This brings us to the energy war. And this is the most critical factor in the entire scenario. Modern warfare runs on liquid fuel. Tanks, jets, and supply trucks need diesel and jet fuel. In this category, the West holds a crushing advantage. Texas alone is an energy superpower. It leads the nation in oil production, refining, and electricity generation. Add in North Dakota's massive oil fields, Alaska's reserves, and the hydroelectric dams of the Pacific Northwest, and the West is energy independent from day one. They can fuel their fleets and fly their jets without importing a single drop of oil. The East is in trouble here. They have coal and nuclear power, but the East Coast relies heavily on pipelines that originate in the West. The Colonial Pipeline, which supplies gasoline to the entire eastern seaboard, starts in Texas. In this scenario, the West shuts that valve on day one. Without Western oil, the East has to rely on imports from overseas, forcing their navy to escort tankers across the Atlantic. The West doesn't have that problem. Their fuel is right under their feet. Next, let's look at military assets. When the split happens, assets stay where they are. The East inherits the Atlantic Fleet centered in Norfolk, Virginia, the largest naval base in the world. They get the Pentagon and the primary training centers for the Army and Marines. They control the administrative heart of the military. But the West gets the Pacific Fleet based in San Diego and Hawaii, which includes a massive portion of the Navy's carrier strike groups. They also get the primary testing grounds for advanced weaponry like Area 51 and White Sands. But the West has an ace in the hole, the nuclear triad. While we are keeping this conventional, it's worth noting that the vast majority of America's land-based nuclear missile silos are located in North Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming. The West physically controls the ultimate high ground. Then there is the civilian factor. The United States has over 400 million privately owned firearms. Or at least those are the ones the government knows about. When we split the map, the culture shifts. The East certainly has guns, especially in the South. Invading Alabama or Tennessee is a bad idea. But per capita, the West is a fortress. Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Texas has some of the highest gun ownership rates in the world. And Colorado is quietly one of the most militarized states in terms of fit, outdoor-capable civilians. This doesn't mean civilians will win the war, but it means occupying Western territory is a nightmare. It is vast, mountainous, and filled with people who can shoot 500 yards and disappear into the Rockies. So, how does this actually play out over time? In the short term, the first 6 months, the advantage goes to the East. They have the established command structures in DC, and the population density to mobilize quickly. They can move troops fast along the dense I-95 corridor. The West is scrambling to organize forces spread over thousands of miles. Expect the East to make aggressive pushes across the Mississippi to secure a buffer zone. But in the midterm, 6 to 18 months, momentum shifts to neutral. As the war drags on, the East hits a wall. Fuel. With pipelines cut, they are rationing gas. Logistics trucks run dry. Meanwhile, the West is getting its act together. Texas refineries are churning out jet fuel, and the Pacific Fleet has secured the coast. The Western war machine is slow to start, but once it moves, it has unlimited energy. In the long term, 2 years and beyond, the advantage shifts to the West. This is where the map decides the winner. The West has strategic depth. If the East invades, they have to march across the flat, open killing fields of the Great Plains, only to hit the wall of the Rocky Mountains. It is a logistical suicide mission. The East, however, is vulnerable. Their cities are clustered on the coast. Their power grid is overstressed, and their food supply is reliant on imports. The West can starve the East out. They hold the breadbasket states. They hold the oil. They control the mouth of the Mississippi. The verdict? If the East can't achieve a knockout blow in the first few months, the West is almost impossible to beat. The West has the food. The West has the fuel. The West has the geography. The most likely outcome is a stalemate that favors the West. The border hardens along the Mississippi. The East remains a populous industrial powerhouse but struggles with energy security. The West emerges as a resource-rich, energy-independent fortress. It wouldn't be a quick victory. It would be a slow realization that while the East has the numbers, the West holds the cards that matter most when the lights go out. If you want to see how a modern civil war might play out, click the video you see on your screen. Thanks for watching.